Gustav Rauff was born on November 17, 1904, in the small town of Repin, Poland, and was an interesting man from the start. He would always put others before himself and help anybody he encountered. However, he was also a pariah to his people, because deep inside him he had a deep desire for order, which was very opposite from the rest of his family and the rest of his town. So, when he caught wind of a massive army rising just an hour and a half away from he packed his things and headed for Berlin at the age of 32. He quickly learned that the force rising in Germany was led by a man called Adolf Hitler, and Gustav loved Hitler's ideals of a perfectly unified and orderly world. Gustav quickly worked his way up the ranks and achieved the status of Obersturmbannführer, or a lieutenant colonel in the Nazi army, and was as proud as a peacock. Soon after, the war started and Poland was invaded, which Gustav felt guilty yet pleased about. He felt sad that he had betrayed his own country, but felt that it was a necessary change. After Poland was fully conquered, Gustav was transferred to Krakow in Poland. By that point, Gustav had moved far enough up the ranks to meet Hitler, and after he met with him for the first time, Hitler felt an immediate liking to Gustav. So much so, in fact, that Hitler commissioned Gustav to build a military base in Krakow for him. Gustav was honored by Hitler's request and immediately started to get to work. A few months passed while working in Krakow, and Gustav loved every second of it. Every day he woke up and knew he was creating a military base for the great Adolf Hitler. He knew that every day the Nazis came a few steps closer to domination over Europe, which would lead to all people being orderly in a perfect world. Gustav would often receive his materials from large groups of trucks that were part of a massive convoy, and he would always notice that there were people in the other trucks. For the longest time, he thought that they were just more Nazis going to the front lines, until one day, he decided to go to one of the trucks and wish them good luck. He was told that he couldn't open the doors or talk to anybody inside when he arrived at one of the trucks. Gustav obliged quickly, but he heard crying from one of the trucks, so he decided to go over to one of the trucks and look inside. After he managed to sneak past the guards, he went to the back of the truck and took a quick look inside. He saw a large group of Jews locked up and stuffed to the brim in the back of the truck. After standing there shocked for a few seconds, he quickly gathered himself back together, returned to the platform, and later at night, returned to his quarters. Gustav was confused at what he had just seen, so he decided to ask his friend, Hitler, about what was happening. After learning the truth from Hitler, Gustav was torn between his loyalty to the Nazis and his moral compass. During his internal debate, he continued to work tirelessly to build Hitler's military base. Still, he was constantly haunted by the horrible scene he had seen just a few days prior. This conflict shook him down to his core values, which were caring for others, and he knew he had to do something to help. Gustav knew that he could use his high rank to his advantage, and after a few nights, Gustav formulated his plan. Every day, Gustav would see plenty of workers beaten by the Nazis for working too slowly or trying to resist, and he knew that he couldn't let the Jews continue to be in the thrall of the Nazis, so he decided to use this to his advantage. Gustav returned to Hitler, stating that his base was far behind schedule and wanted to enlist the Jews being sent to their deaths. Hitler eventually agreed, and Gustav had his plan. When the Jews arrived at his camp, they would be handed letters made by Gustav himself, ensuring that no Nazi was to harm the Jew that possessed the letter, unless given permission from Gustav, except Gustav never told Hitler about his letters. Instead, he told Hitler that the soldiers guarding the building site could shoot the Jews if they felt like it. Gustav would use this to his advantage, as, one by one, he would sneak the Jews into his quarters, where they would be sent to the port in Gdynia by other Nazis that felt what they were doing was wrong. Once they reached the dock, they would be loaded into empty barrels on a merchant ship and sent to Sweden, where they would be free. Gustav initially thought it wouldn't work because the soldiers would catch on, but he later learned that the soldiers were replaced every 2 weeks, which matched the new inflow of Jews to his building site. His plan worked almost flawlessly until 1 week, a soldier stayed longer than 2 weeks. The soldier was part of the Kripo, or the criminal police, and was sent by Hitler, who suspected Gustav after their first interaction with the Jews. The Kripo reported back to Hitler, and in the middle of the night, right after Gustav had finished sending off yet another batch of Jews, the Feldjägerkorps, or Nazi military police, were at his door. They pushed Gustav into his house when he answered the door and shoved him to the ground. Immediately, the creepo, who had been watching him for weeks, pulled out a gun and aimed it toward Gustav's head. Gustav couldn't stop himself from lamenting, knowing that he was about to die. Still, he knew that he was dying for a right cause, and that his death would be at least a fraction of a reparation for all the injustice he had helped bring upon the Jews. Gustav was executed for his actions, but the legacy of the venerable Gustav Rauff lived on. His selflessness and bravery inspired others to take action against the Nazi regime after he was humiliated in the news. He encouraged people inside and outside the Nazi regime, including Oskar Schindler and his real-life counterpart, Helmut Kleinicke. His story symbolized hope for those struggling to survive during one of the darkest periods in human history. Gustav's story is a testament to the power of individual action in the face of overwhelming evil. He knew he could not change the world alone, but he couldn't stand by and watch as innocent people were killed. Gustav's actions remind us that the world still has hope and good, even in the darkest times.